and welcome back to another episode. I am so excited and honored, as always, that you are here. Tonight, we are diving into why I chose to home birth, and I'm going to talk about everything I considered, from comparing home birth, birth center, hospital, as well as why I chose the provider I did, and spoiler alert, why I fired my first provider, and in hopes that if you are pregnant, if you're thinking about getting pregnant, if you've already had kiddos, but you want to have more kids and you want to do it different this time around, this episode is for you. And if you're one of those women out there who is not even sure if you want to have kids, hello, I was one of you. I never thought I would be a mother. This episode still has so much wisdom for you just to hear a different perspective, because the stories around birth and pregnancy and postpartum that are passed down in our society through culture, through our lineage, through movies and Instagram and all the things have just done it such a disservice. And I am so ready to be a part of changing that narrative and showing you absolutely, how freaking powerful your body is as a woman, how absolutely full of wisdom the body is, and bringing the power back and the beauty back into birth, back into this experience, this rite of passage, this massive portal of transformation that we can go through as women if we choose. And I want to bring us back and root us back into stories that inspire us to want to walk this path, that give us courage to walk this path, that remind us that birth is not a medical event. It's not an emergency sick care event. That birth is the most natural physiological process ever. It's like going to the bathroom. It's like your heart beating. It is so natural. And I want to be part of bringing us back to that truth. I want to speak it over and over and over, and let that be the new soundtrack. Let that be the new message that goes out, that carries us forward, to remind ourselves that birth belongs to us, that we can do this, that we are powerful in it. And I want to take a moment for a second for any woman out there who's been trying to get pregnant, who has been trying and trying and it hasn't worked. Please know that your body is still just as powerful. For any women who have had hysterectomies or any type of surgery, you are still just as powerful. This power lives within you. It's in your tissues. It's in your being. And if you're struggling with infertility of any kind, please reach out to me. I have so many beautiful, beautiful resources of physicians and acupuncturists who specialize in that, and they can help you, because most often it's just your body needing support on the physical level or on the emotional level. And if it's on the emotional level, please reach out to me. I would love to help support you. But if you're struggling in that way in any kind, please know that I'm holding so much space for you. And I know it's frustrating and hard, and I have resources for you if that is where you are at. So I just wanted to share that. So let's dive in here. And actually, before we do, I just want to take a moment to really sit and just celebrate how absolutely miraculous and powerful our bodies are as women. I mean, do you ever think about this? I think about this all the time, but maybe I'm weird, which I totally am weird. But I sit and think about, like, if I see a human on the street, takes me back to the moment that they were once a little baby that their mother grew in their belly. Like, we can grow humans. Is that not the coolest thing in the world? Society keeps going on. We have different generations because of us, because of the power that our body is. And we grow babies without having to even think about it. I mean, you can just go on living your daily life, doing the things you've always done, except for maybe a couple things. And the baby grows. You don't have to get up in the morning and say, okay, today we're going to grow a leg, and tomorrow the brain is going to develop. I mean, your body just does it. Can you take a moment and realize how full of wisdom your body is? And how absolutely powerful your body is. As women, we have so many soundtracks that play that tell us we're too much, we're not enough, we're too emotional, too loud, too sexy, not sexy enough, and everything in between, too fat, too skinny. So many things coming at us to try and tamp us down because they don't want us to know and fully embody our power. Because I'm telling you, I've been working with women for the last decade, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing in comparison to a woman who fully recognizes her power. Not because of her resume, not because of where she went to school or the money she has, but because she inherently knows the power and the force that she is. And part of what I really want to do is be part of helping relight, reignite the spark that lives inside of each of us to fully shine it in the world, to fully be in our power, which also means being fully connected to our intuition, being heart-led, being in love and at one with our bodies. I mean, how many of us as women have been at war with our bodies for forever? All the conditioning around our looks, our beauty, what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be fit and healthy. I mean, all the things. I was at war with my body for forever. I mean, I had an eating disorder and I was a dancer and a cheerleader, and that comes with the territory, which is so sad, but I was at war with myself for forever. And I used my body as a way to control outside things that were happening around me that were very outside of my control. So I spent so many years at war with my body, which is also partially what played into not wanting to get pregnant. I didn't want to give up my body. I didn't want to have my body ruined, or what if I couldn't bounce back, which is a whole other episode that I will talk about another time. But I just want to just root and ground here for a moment that if you have been at war with your body, if you are carrying wounding in the way that you look and see yourself, if you look in the mirror and just can pick things that you don't like, or you hear the words of your mother or your friends or social media telling you all the reasons why you're not enough, I want to stop for a moment and tell you that you are enough, and that your inherent worth, your worth just because you breathe is more than worthy. And you are beyond powerful. I mean, it's beyond human comprehension to even fathom how we grow humans inside of us without even thinking about it. So if you're feeling out of your power, if you're feeling unworthy, not enough, all the things, I just want you to hear me for a moment that you are so powerful just because you exist. Just because you exist, and your body is so powerful and it never betrays you. It's always there as long as we care for it, just like we would our cars. We have to care for this vessel, and we can do amazing things with it. So that's my first little intro, my first plug, my first super powerful message that just feels so potent. And I'm sure I will say that a million times on the show because I just want women to start to hear that more. We need more of us speaking beautiful stories into what it means to be a woman. I mean, can you imagine having young girls and raising a generation where there's no shame around their cycle, where there's connection to the body, where there's connection to natural beauty, to our faces moving, to our emotions, to our softness, to the way we walk through life? Can you imagine that, and imagine what it means when we stop tearing down other women to make ourselves feel better, when we stop taking the war with ourselves and throwing it at other people, and instead we heal this first and then we heal as a collective. So hear that. And if you need to listen to that a million times, if that's the message for you today, then pause here and just listen to that over and over. And on the days that you doubt it, just hear my voice until you can start to hear and feel that yourself, that you are powerful just because you breathe, just because you exist. You are worthy. And now, if you want to stay on, if you want to hear why I chose home birth, let's jump into it. So Growing up, my mom is a nurse, my dad is a doctor. So I do have a medical Western allopathic medicine family. My stepmother is a physical therapist. So I've definitely been around that world and kind of grew up with that. But my parents are also very holistically have a very holistic mindset. There we go. And we were raised in that as well. But my mom had some traumatic births with us, and I will have her on here to talk and share those stories herself because I think it's more powerful to hear from her. And I want to talk about birth stories on this podcast. And she gave birth in a hospital, but she had shared with me the story of my birth and what happened. And in that moment, that she shared that with me, I was probably in high school. I was like, if I ever give birth, it will not be in a hospital because of this. And I kind of carried that, but didn't really look into it, didn't really think into it anymore. And then fast forward over the years, I kind of started losing faith in our Western allopathic model of care. It's really sick care. One of my favorite teachers and favorite humans on the planet is Mandy Trapp. If you don't know her, look her up. She's absolutely brilliant and just doing amazing things for the planet. But she had a video today and she called it out. It's sick care. Let's call it what it is. That is what our medical model has become. And when I got really sick in college and was, almost dying, kind of just dwindling away, Western allopathic care really did me wrong. I mean, they were so off on the diagnosis and the treatment plan and what they wanted to do that also made me lose faith in the system. And I went to someone who did applied kinesiology, chiropractic, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and healed naturally, completely from a very, very bad state. My vitamin levels were like double the max toxicity that you can ever have in your body. And I was not taking vitamins. So, I mean, things were not great and I healed. And so that was my second thing of like, can I trust this system? And then fast forward to 2020 and everything happening there. And, I just knew something wasn't right. And I decided to dive headfirst into that. And I researched everything on both sides. And through that whole experience of the last couple of years, I really lost trust in the system and learning that our med school textbooks are written by the pharmaceutical industry and that industry is so controlled. I mean, doctors are now controlled and paid for by insurance and by pharmaceuticals. And that's not who I want doing my care because the goal of healing, the goal of birth is to do it and be done, right? Not this ongoing thing where you have to take pills or, this process that you have to do forever. And so I'll share more into those stories in the future, but just so you have context, I just started losing faith in the system. And then the more reading, the more research that I started to do around birth, the more that I recognized that the most important factor of birth, of where you choose to give birth, is where you as the mother feel safe and supported so you can relax, so you can drop in to the experience. And this is going to vary for everyone. Just because I believe in home birth and I don't trust most hospitals doesn't mean that all hospitals are bad. It doesn't mean that all midwives are great. And it does not mean that home birth or birth center birth is for everyone. I know it's not. I fully believe it's not. And I know in my heart it's not. What is most important when choosing to give birth is where are you going to feel most safe and supported? Wherever that is your answer. Not how your husband feels, not how your mother feels, not how your friends feel, or what the internet tells you. Also, there are a lot of websites that if you are pregnant, please don't go to them. And if you're wondering what they are, I will send you a resource list to avoid because it's absolutely terrible, terrible advice. That's another story for another time. But coming back, the most important thing is where you feel most comfortable to give birth. And for me, when I thought about being able to be in my home, in my own space, that I could have the lighting the way I wanted, I could move freely, I could have music playing, I could eat food, I could do whatever I want, felt most safe to my nervous system when I really dropped into it. That was like my first tell. The second thing I considered is that the amount of calories you burn in birth is like equivalent to running, I don't know, like a 3-day marathon or something crazy like that. And at hospitals, they literally don't let you eat because there's always the what if they're going to take you into surgery. They're kind of prepping for that because that's their fallback. And if I triggered you with that, look at our C-section rate and how it has risen over the last couple of years. It's unreal. So I'm here to trigger. I know this is going to hit differently for everybody, and that's okay. If this isn't resonating, turn it off. That's okay. That's all you have to do. But if you're here and you want to learn more, stick with me. So we burn so many calories while in birth. You need to eat, because one of the major reasons why birth stalls or why it ends in C-section is because of fatigue, especially for first-time moms. And what's one way to combat fatigue? Being able to drink as much as you want and being able to eat. Now, at hospitals, you're hooked up to an IV, which has its own sort of, I'd say, side effects with it, but you can't eat. Most hospitals won't let you eat. And that to me felt so restrictive. Here I am, my body is growing this beautiful baby and it's doing it on its own. And then you're going to tell me that during birth, I can't do what my body is asking me to do when it needs it? Hell no. That did not resonate for me. Okay. And then the next thing was that hospital policy really takes precedence over anything. And your provider is going to follow hospital policy because they're trying to avoid being sued. Now, this also goes with midwives who are medwives, where they respond more to the system than they do to their patients. So this can happen at a birth center. This can happen at a home birth, depending on who your provider is. So it's really important to also really sort out and really get clear on your providers. But I did not want someone else dictating if I could move around, how they wanted to monitor my baby, how they wanted me to be in position for them to birth because it was easier for them. I wanted to be able to follow the intuitive whispers and the intuitive lessons of my body asking me to do what it wanted me to do to move my baby down. Birth is such a spiritual process if you let it. And I think it's really interesting. I'm just going to touch on this because I will do another episode on this, but as a culture, we are so terrified of feeling negative emotions, feeling pain, anger, frustration, discomfort, any gritty emotion. We have such an aversion to it. It's why we numb out with TV, sex, alcohol, drugs, food, exercise. I mean, you name it, there's a way to numb out, and it's become the way in society. And this is what I've seen in my business over the last decade is working with people and their emotions to come back to actually feeling them, to unearthing them. And I was one of those people. I avoided my emotions. I numbed out in so many different ways. But coming home to those emotions and really learning to feel the full spectrum, there's no good or bad emotion, right? It's just the spectrum, and we swing and we move through the pendulum of it. Just being able to move through that freely was so healing to me, and being okay with those uncomfortable emotions opened me up to another level of joy and of love that I didn't know was possible. And so when it came down for me to, am I okay to feel everything in birth, every sensation? For me, it was like, hell yeah, because I'm not afraid of the discomfort. It's why I do what I do, because I love sitting in these uncomfortable places with people until they feel comfortable. And I find that a lot of women want to just numb out. They don't want to feel it during birth. They don't want to be part of it because there's fear there. And it's because of the cultural society kind of beliefs and stories that we've passed down that have really done us wrong. But in those uncomfortable feelings, there's so much wisdom. And if you are present to all of it, birth becomes this spiritual portal, this passage where you go inside and you meet your baby, and you and your baby work together to come out. And if that sounds really woo-woo, it's not. That is what birth is. I mean, you think about, as women, we are connected to both realms. We are connected to the physical world, and we're also connected to the non-physical, to the other side of the spectrum, to the other portal, to the other realms. Like, I can't even think of the word I want to use, but you think of like heaven and earth, like we are connected. We carry both within us when we're pregnant. So birth is a super spiritual process if we let it be that. And I just want to drop into that for a moment is like, what's actually possible? How can we grow? How can we expand? And what is part of the journey when we're actually present to the full journey? And sure, birth can be super uncomfortable. I know there's a whole movement right now around pain-free birth, and I believe 100% that it exists. And that's not the journey for everyone. It was not the journey in my case. I needed to have the raw, primal, painful sort of journey, this loud experience. And if you meet my son, he's intense and he's wild and he's just there. And his birth experience is exactly his personality. And so I went through the pain, I went through the discomfort. And it was such an initiation for me into motherhood. And it was such a rite of passage for me. And I do believe that no matter how you give birth, it is a rite of passage. And I'm just curious how much of the wisdom and the medicine and the embodiment we miss out on by completely not being present to the actual miracle that is unfolding as we have our kids. When we're way tuned into the fear and to letting the doctors decide and we're out of our power, what are we missing out on? And here's the thing. I don't care where you give birth. I don't care if you have an epidural, if you give birth in the hospital, home birth, whatever it is. It doesn't matter to me. I want women to be educated on all of it, on the pros and the cons to hospital birth, to all the interventions, to home birth, to birth centers, to everything in between. And then from there, making empowered decisions of what's going to be best for you, not for anyone else. And as long as you feel empowered in that, that is all that matters. And that's all I care about. I've had a lot of people come at me like, well, I couldn't home birth and da 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 da. And I'm like, I believe in home birth because it just allows it to be really sacred without you even having to try. And I'll say again, it's not for everyone. And I don't care where you give birth as long as you chose it from an empowered state after doing your research, after educating yourself on all sides of the spectrum, finding neutrality and moving forward with what's best for you. Okay. But I invite you into this idea that birth is a spiritual experience. It can enlighten you. It can empower you. It can ignite you into this new journey of motherhood, whether you've had one child, no children, 10 children, it doesn't matter. Each time it's different. It's a different initiation, different cellular codes coming in as we move through that experience. And so I personally wanted to be able to feel it all. I wanted to be in control of my birth experience. I wanted to be able to dictate how that happened, the way that went. And another part of birth is that if something shifts the environment, so like you going to a different place. So if you're laboring and then you get in the car, that can stall labor or slow labor. If you're in the hospital and new staff is coming in or changing, that can stall labor. If, people are constantly monitoring you, that can stall labor. And I just didn't even want to do that. I just wanted to be able to, once I started that process, drop in and see it through. And the last part is I just wanted to be in my bed when it was done. It was such a beautiful experience to give birth and then crawl into my bed and be home and then be taken care of. And we didn't leave our house for the first couple of weeks, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And I'll dive into postpartum care a whole other time. So just a little recap. I chose because I wanted to have full autonomy over my birth, full sovereignty over my body and my birthing experience. I wanted to be able to move, to eat, to do what I wanted. I didn't want to have to leave the house and worry about would labor stall or, how would they be dictating how they wanted me to be. I wanted to be in full control for me. I wanted to feel totally sovereign and connected into that experience without anything else interfering with it. And so that was really important to me for those reasons. So if you are looking, where am I going to give birth? I want you to think about that. Where will you feel most safe? And if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, you can ask yourself this right now. Imagine, where do you feel most safe? Where can you feel your pelvic floor relax? Because that's really important. Everyone focuses on the contractions or the surges, but it's so much about relaxing. So where, when you think about, do you feel your body relaxing? Not because of stories, not because of what's happening in the mind, but just where do you feel that? Would that be in a hospital, at a birth center, at home, at a friend's house? Where would it feel most safe for you? Where do you feel like you could really drop into your intuition and really hear the wisdom of your body and your baby to support you through that journey? Are you feeling like you would want an option to dole out any of the intensity that is birth, any of those gritty things that we experience? Is that something that feels most safe to you? Are you open to not having that be an option? Are you open to alternative ways to an epidural, to numbing the pain, to lessening the intensity? Just think through that, and you can come back to this process, take as much time as you need, journal it out, maybe sit and journal each, like what would it look like at each? And I invite you, I think I said this a little bit before earlier, but it's really important. If you're wanting a home birth or birth center birth or a natural birth, even at a hospital, and your husband is not on board, or your mother or your friends or whoever else, I invite you to politely say, then don't be a part of it. Because you are the only person that will experience this experience. You're the only person that will have to move through and feel from the choices that you make. You and your baby are directly impacted. And so they may be saying that out of their own fear. And I invite you to maybe come to me, work with me. Let's work through, let's do some fear processing and move through. But I invite you to not let their fear become your fear. And if it is becoming your fear, then work with me in one of my containers so we can move through it. Don't make decisions out of fear. There's one of my other teachers, I'll link her below, who I learned hypnobirthing from. Not her certification, it's just who I learned from. I did her classes. She says that most first-time moms are asking, what if? What if? What if? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if I'm not at a hospital? What if, what if, what if? And after or second-time moms are saying, if only I knew what I knew now. And that for me stuck. That for me was a turning pivotal point in my pregnancy of what can I learn? How can I learn everything from all sides of the spectrum so I'm not asking myself after if only? But I did everything here. I didn't just get stuck in the fear and in the busyness of the mind and the what if. And I used the tools that I've learned through my coaching and meditation and energy work to really hone in on what do I want to create? How do I see this going instead of getting caught in the fear? So if you're caught in the fear, or your spouse is caught in the fear, or your parents or your friends, I invite you to set boundaries and to say your fear does not have to be my fear. And please work through that or stop sharing with me because I don't hold that fear, or I'm starting to take it on and I don't want to. And then come work with me and let's actually move that through so it doesn't become part of your process, so you can make decisions from that empowered space and not from a place of fear. Our minds are designed to keep us safe. They are designed to keep us running from the saber-toothed tiger and aware of threats around us. They're not designed to make decisions that the heart can make and that the gut can make. Okay, so we've got to move through decisions without that fear being super present there. And now I just want to move in for a moment into providers. Your provider can make or break your entire birth. And so you want to make sure that you thoroughly ask questions. You interview multiple providers. Don't just take a word of a friend. Don't just read reviews. I mean, interview the provider, where their location is, whether that's a hospital, birth center, if it's at your home. Get to know them. And if you're curious, what questions do I even ask? Please reach out. I can give you my free resource into what to ask your provider. It's a full list of things that are really helpful to ask your provider to get clear on, do you align? It's like dating, right? It's like when you're dating and you're trying to figure out, could I marry this person and raise our kids together? Do our values align? That is so important. And When I chose my first provider, I was choosing out of fear. I chose her when I was still operating out of fear. And yes, she was a home birth midwife, but man, was it not a fit. And I'll get into that more when I tell my pregnancy story, but it was not a fit. And I was so terrified to let her go and go somewhere else because I was well into second trimester and I just had to follow that. And so I did. I let her go. And then I found the most beautiful birthing center who I actually did a home birth with, but I got to work with all the midwives at the birth center and then had a beautiful midwife at my own home. And it was the best experience. And I know had I stayed with my first midwife, I know what my experience would have been like with her because of how my birth went, because I had a very non-textbook birth and I know she would have not handled it in the way that my midwife did. So all that to say, if you are early pregnancy, mid-pregnancy, I've had clients literally at like 36 weeks change providers. It's doable. Ask these questions. And if you're giving birth at a hospital, you need to get these questions answered as well and make sure they line up. Make sure it's taken care of and it's going to be what you want, because so many times we just aren't asking the questions because we don't know. We just look up, oh, well, I've been going to this OB, or my friend went here, or it's closest to my home, or my insurance covers it. We cannot be choosing where we're going to do arguably one of the most important things that we'll ever do based on the cost, which I know for a lot of people is hard. We had to budget. We had to make it work because it is costly out of pocket, but it's also costly going to insurance and paying for hospital stays. It's costly either way. You're having a baby. And sometimes it's worth it to figure out, okay, maybe instead of doing a baby registry with all the things that we'll probably never use because most babies don't like all of that stuff anyways, we ask for people to contribute to our birth center or home birth fund. There are always ways to make it work. So if you're making a decision out of finances, please come to me, or just because your insurance only covers a certain hospital, bad decision. Please come to me and I will help you brainstorm and find ways to resource having the birth that you want at the place you want, because that's where it feels best to you. Not out of fear and not because your insurance covers it or because it feels like it's the most affordable, because there's always a cost. When we cut corners, there's always a cost at some way. And some people are going to hate me for saying that, but it's true. It's like when you take antibiotics, sure, it makes things go away a little bit faster. There are side effects and there are costs to taking those antibiotics. When we cut nature, there's always a cost. So I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, so just to recap, because I feel like this is a really good stopping place for tonight. When choosing where to give birth, where are you going to feel most safe and empowered? Where do you feel like you can feel your body and your pelvic floor relax when you think about being there? Not because your husband wants you to, not because your wife wants you to, not because of your parents, nothing. Where do you feel most safe? How do you want your birth to go? Do you want to be able to move around? Do you want to feel sovereign and in control of your experience? Or do you want someone to kind of tell you what to do, when to do it, and when you're ready to go? Does that feel good for you? Do you want to be able to eat when you're in labor? Do you want to be able to birth in a birthing pool? You have to think about, what do you want your birth to look like? And those were all the things that I considered for me. And I promise I will do another breakdown of this on another podcast, and this will be in my membership, and this is what I work with my one-to-one clients. We draw out and dream up your dream birth to get really clear on where would be the best fit out of those three places for you to give birth, and we really find that sweet spot for you of where that would be best. So if you're also kind of lost in this, please reach out to me. Let's set up a call and let's get you working with me and really get you aligned in your vision for your birth. So that's what you have to get really clear on. That's what I did. And it was no doubt for me, home birth was the place that I wanted to be. It was the place where I needed to be. And then with the provider, I asked really good questions once I moved my way out of fear. Once I moved out of all the what ifs and letting the fear and the cultural beliefs and all of that bullshit guide me and lead me. Once I moved out of that and I got quiet and I found my intuition again and I found my heart and I connected with my baby, I knew I needed to make different decisions, ask different questions. If you're not getting good answers, ask better questions. I think Tony Robbins says that. One of his mentors may have said it. It's amazing. Ask better questions if you want a different life. Ask different questions. So I started asking different questions and I moved out of fear. And in that, I found so much empowerment, and it led me to deciding on who my best provider was, to fire my first provider, and that I wanted to give birth at home because that's what felt most safe and most empowering to me, where I could feel into my primal power. And I am so, so thankful that I did. So all that recap for you. You are fucking powerful just because you're a woman. Oh my gosh. Please don't forget that. Please know that. Please hear me. And you are worthy just because you breathe. And your body is miraculous because we can grow humans, whether you ever choose to or not, whether you're struggling right now. You are miraculous because that lives within your tissues as a woman. And it's amazing. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's the most beautiful process ever. And birth is a spiritual container. It's a spiritual portal if you allow it to be. And where you give birth and how you give birth is definitely going to contribute into that. And it's important. Don't just do a hospital because it's what everyone's done. Do it because you really, really want to. Or don't do a home birth because it's a trend. Do it because that's where you feel safe. We've got to ask the questions. We've got to get really, really clear with ourselves. Where is best for me? Where am I most empowered? Where am I most true in my intuition, in my power, that I can do this in a way that's going to feel really good and be this rite of passage that I want it to be. So I don't have to say, if only, if only, if only, if only. Don't get caught in the what ifs. It's not worth it. It's such a beautiful process when you move past that fear, when you get comfortable with being uncomfortable and in the grittiness. That's where the growth is. I mean, that's life, baby. That is it. That's where the good stuff is. So I invite you into that. And if you're lost, if you're newly pregnant, if you want to do it different, then please reach out to me. Let's connect and let's start to help you move through all of these processes, because it's a lot and it's overwhelming and there's so much bullshit out there. So let me help you sort through the bullshit, get you clear on where you want to be so you can have the birth that you really, really dream of. It's such a beautiful thing. And it's why I became a doula. It's why I'm in this work. It's why my coaching business now revolves around mothers and women, because I'm just blown away by us. I am blown away by us. I'm blown away by you. And I'm honored that you shared this time with me today. So until next time, there's so much goodness here, and I'll continue to unpack all of it in future episodes. But re-listen as many times as you need and reach out if you need anything. And I'll talk to you next time.